Gerai, kolegos, mes turim darbotvarkę, ar galėtume pritart? Ačiū, pritarta, and let me introduce two distinguished ambassadors. Ambassador from Austria. Austria already happy because completed the presidency, and Romania taking over. And so we have translations, Lithuanian and English, for some what need translation. And let me ask you, probably you kindly agree to respond some questions after your speech, after your statement from the members of European Affairs Committee. Okay, so Madam Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear honorable members of the Committee of European and Foreign Affairs, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and privilege for me to be here today and to present the results of the Austrian presidency of the second half of 2018. We very much appreciate the interest of this House. And indeed, we are happy that this half year is concluded, as we had a very, very busy 6 months, and we had a very packed agenda. But before I present what we believe needs to be highlighted most, I would like to thank Lithuania for the support during the last 6 months. It is, of course, not possible to bring forward legislative dossiers or political initiatives without the support of the partners. And particularly in the most challenging files, we were able to count on the Lithuanian support. And I would like to explicitly thank for this. Austria took over the presidency in a very challenging environment. As you are certainly aware, the EU is approaching the end of the legislative cycle. There are high expectations of the Commission, of EU partners, and of the European Parliament to finalize proposals that were already on the table, and the European Commission unfortunately decided to table also new ones. Then there were highly controversial issues like the migration file and the rule of law procedures. And these issues had the potential also to poison the political climate within the EU 28 during the last 6 months. We had to kick off, and we had to set the scene for the always very difficult negotiations on the multi-annual financial framework. And then the Brexit negotiations were to be finalized, where the unity of the 27 was at stake. And even more at stake when we approached the conclusion of the withdrawal agreement, and also particularly on the framework of the future relationship. Brexit, but also the shockwaves of the economic and the migration crisis, as well as numerous external threats, has put the EU and its citizens in the mood of uncertainty, undermining trust of our citizens in the EU and undermining their will to look into a joint future. In order to respond to this, and in line with our explicitly pro-European government program, Austria chose the message, "A Europe that protects," as the motto for its presidency. It was important to the federal government to help shape the EU in a positive way and to best prepare the ground for the next policy cycle. The EU is in a crucial moment, and we are convinced that we need to join forces and that there is too much at stake as to not to work on common solutions. The Austrian presidency therefore focused on the following 3 areas. First, security and the fight against illegal migration. Second, prosperity and competitiveness. Third, stability in the neighborhood. On the first issue, security and migration, coping effectively with illegal migration was and is one of the core political challenges of the EU, also with view to its relevance for the upcoming EP elections in May. The necessary turnaround in the EU's migration policy was achieved by the informal European Council in September, shifting the focus of the discussion from distributing illegal migrants within the EU to the other dimensions of the problem, establishing effective preventive measures such as the protection of external borders, tackling root causes, and extending cooperation with relevant third countries. The Central Mediterranean route has since de facto been closed, with hardly any more arrivals. An agreement was reached under the Austrian presidency to strengthen Frontex, the Frontex mandate, and the cooperation with third countries. Other achievements concern the establishment of rules to protect the proliferation of terrorism-related content in social media, securing digital evidence, and establishing the electronic ETIAS registration system, just to name a few. On our second priority, prosperity and competitiveness, and this is de facto on securing the well-being of our citizens, we had numerous files on the table that focused particularly on the improvement of the single market. One cluster of legislative files concerned the extension of the digital single market, where 80% of the files were closed, particularly on domain management issues and online trading and on cybersecurity. And we launched a first debate on EU level on robotics and on artificial intelligence. We are glad that also joint efforts on environmental and climate protection were enhanced, for example, by agreements on banning plastic and on reducing CO2 emissions. With the agreement on the mobility package, one core file of the entire current legislative cycle was concluded. A prosperous and competitive EU also needs a modern budget. Good, swift, and substantial progress was achieved on the Commission's proposal for the budget 2021 to 2027. Austria was able to identify, with the constructive spirit of member states, their core concerns and to present a complete negotiating box at the end of December. Austria has thus provided a very solid foundation for the works to come. At this point, let me also mention our efforts to strengthen the subsidiarity principle and to have it respected even better during the next European policy cycle. I know that this intention and this principle is very close to the heart of national parliaments as well. We have had several discussions on this in the Council, organized a large conference and issued conclusions. Our mantra is that instead of a Europe that over-regulates on small details, we need a Europe that assumes responsibility in big questions. And it is a matter of better regulation, of effective EU policy making to keep this mindset in the heads of legislators of all sides. With our third core issue, stability in the neighborhood, we turn more to the external dimension of our presidency. We focused on two regions, particularly relevant for the EU. This is the Western Balkan region and Eastern neighborhood. During the Austrian presidency, the EU succeeded in once again placing greater focus on the Southeast Europe region, the Western Balkans, and initiating a new dynamic in the process of the rapprochement for all countries with an European accession perspective. also supported by intensive debates with our EU partners, as well as extensive visiting policy by the entire Austrian government, particularly to Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Kosovo. This contributed to placing the region again in the center stage of EU politics, and in the opening of 2 new negotiation chapters with Serbia and one with Montenegro. After intense political interventions by the Commission and by our Chancellor, as well as our Minister for Foreign Affairs, the decades-long name issue between Macedonia and Greece could be resolved. We also gave special emphasis on our Eastern neighborhood, particularly in strengthening the Eastern Partnership. Further developing the Eastern Partnership and the EU ties to these 6 countries was declared one of the Austrian EU presidency priorities for the Foreign Affairs Council in the EU. Already in the trio presidency program, together with Estonia and Bulgaria, a democratic, stable, prosperous, and resilient Eastern neighborhood was emphasized to be a key EU objective. Debates at the Foreign Affairs Council were held, and upon initiative of Austria, Eastern Partnership ministerial meetings of foreign affairs ministers and environment ministers were convened. The annual Eastern Partnership Conference was held in Vienna in December. We concluded the first EU-Ukraine declaration since 2015. The mandate of the EU advisory mission to Ukraine was prolonged. Joint declarations on the status of the Crimea and the Azov Sea were issued, and new fora with Armenia and Azerbaijan were established. This is to name but a few, knowing that this is of particularly interest to Lithuania. These initiatives were accompanied by numerous events, conferences, high-level meetings, and field missions organized by the presidency. This was meant to underline the importance of the countries concerned for the security of the EU, and was meant to prepare the ground for this year's anniversary of the Eastern Partnership and the possible reshaping of this instrument. In addition to these 2 focus regions, the high-level forum Africa-Europe in December served to strengthen the 2 continents' partnership with a focus on digitalization and innovation. This should contribute to the EU paying more attention to the economic development in Africa, given its relevance in the migration context, but also when it comes to preserve the EU's global competitiveness. The forum brought together almost 1,000 companies, as well as heads of state and government from both continents. We want to support positive economic development in Africa and help to invest in jobs and training opportunities. Apart from the 3 areas, migration, competitive, and neighborhood, there was of course also Brexit among the great challenges of our presidency. As we chaired all EU 27 meetings on COREPER and on the level of the General Affairs Council at 27, the responsibility of the presidency to move the negotiations forward and to maintain the unity of the 27 was quite considerable. To this end, several political meetings by government members with the UK were held, and these efforts proved to be successful as the negotiations with the UK on the withdrawal agreement were concluded in time, and agreement was reached on the framework of the future relationship. We hope, of course, that we will be able to build on these results that we deem fair and forward-looking solutions for the future. When it comes to the question, what else will remain from the Austrian EU presidency? And as I have another minute, I think, I would like to mention an issue that is very close to our heart. At the high-level conference, Europe Beyond Anti-Semitism and Anti-Zionism, Securing Jewish Life in Europe, in November in Vienna, participants discussed the security of the Jewish community, of awareness raising, and how to address anti-Semitism in Europe. Austria wants to take responsibility for looking not only at the past, but also at the present and to the future. We must take sustainable steps in the fight against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, so that Jews in Europe and beyond can live in security. We are glad that the Presidency provided us an opportunity to launch the adoption of a ministerial declaration on the fight against anti-Semitism, which was also explicitly welcomed by the European Council in December. Honorable members of Parliament, the European Union is currently going through a very challenging time. The Austrian Presidency hopes that it was able to contribute to tackle them and to have passed on the Presidency torch in a sound and solid manner to our successor, the Romanian Presidency. We wish the Romanian Presidency all success and the best of luck for the coming months. Austria, as your European neighbor, will continue to dedicate all its efforts to the well-being of our partners and of the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for your very comprehensive report. And there are some members of Parliament which want to ask you, Victoria Chimilite-Nielsen, first.
Thank you. Madam Ambassador, for your excellent presentation. Well, I think there is no point of ignoring the elephant in the room. What do you think about yesterday's events, and do you think that the orderly Brexit is still a possibility?
You want to collect?
Yep. Virginijus Poderys.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Ambassador, thank you for your presentation and, of course, for your presidency. Job well done, my compliments. But my question is on energy, Nord Stream 2, of course. Would you comment the progress during your presidency on this case, on this project? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It seems to me we have quite a different opinion on it, Lithuania and Austria.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, Brexit. I think the ball is in the camp of the British at the moment. They will need to sort out what way ahead they choose, whether the parliamentary process is going to continue in Westminster or whether there will be a referendum or general elections. I assume that Theresa May will try to get back to the Council and see whether the provisions on the Irish backstop will probably be changed. The Council, the EU 27 have been very clear on this, that the withdrawal agreement will not be changed. So the annex to the withdrawal agreement containing the backstop solution, I think, will not be adapted, but we have the declaration on the future relationship, and probably this is a possibility to provide further clarifications on the possible implementation of the backstop. But the Parliament at this stage does not know itself what it wants. The Council has not been approached by the UK with a request. We will need to re-evaluate when we know what the UK wants. And as soon as we know what the UK wants, we can also decide whether we would be ready to prolong the negotiation phase, to prolong according to Article 50 for probably a few weeks. But this should be, of course, a means to an end. We should define what the added value of this prolongation is. So I expect that the British will do this. Let's see what happens then. On energy, I assume you mean the gas. I must say, the file in all its details, I do not know where it stands. I think it was not concluded, the file. During our presidency, we, of course, we refrained from formulating national interests, particularly also on the gas connectivity, and I think it is on the status of the Commission and but now at the end of after our presidency, of course, we will again come forward with our national positions, and let's see whether this file is going to be concluded during the next months or not. But of course, we are fully aware that we have different interests in this field. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Audronis Ažubalis.
Ačiū, pirmininkė.
I'm sorry.
Aš norėčiau paklausti gerbiamus ambasadorės dėl Austrijos pozicijos, dėl taip vadinamo teisės viršinybės klausimo, kurį bandoma susijęti su būsimo ES biudžetu ir išmokomis. Kokia čia Austrijos pozicija? Ir kitas klausimas tai būtų dėl solidarumo. Kaip Austrija supranta solidarumo migracijos klausimų? Ar Austrija palaiko tam tikras formulės, tam tikrus paskirstimus, perskirstimus valstybėse narėse, ar vis tik mano, kad solidarumas gali turėti įvairias formas? Ačiū.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rule of law, a very, very important issue to Austria. We had to follow up various avenues in the rule of law issues. We had the general rule of law debate in the General Affairs Council, the annual rule of law debate. We selected the topic of trust in public institutions. Then we had the rule of law procedures on the basis of Article 7 EU treaty on Poland and on Hungary. We knew that this is a very controversial topic, and we tried to listen to member states very carefully and on what their interests and concerns are. And this led to several discussions in the General Affairs Council during our presidency, particularly on Poland, but also one time, I think, on Hungary. The files remain open. Article 7, Procedure 7.1 is not concluded at the moment. The Council has not made a decision. It unfortunately is now up to the Romanian presidency to continue these files. Our national position, which comes forward again, is that a rule of law is a fundamental for functioning of the European Union, and that we should not look away, and that they are not negotiable. So these are very clear national positions that we have had on the rule of law. Then there is the third strand that you mentioned also, is the budget, the conditionality, the proposal of the Commission on the conditionality of funding of EU funds. There, during our presidency, we have not made a final detailed position. Our general position is that we are ready to look into this and that we need to examine it, its effects and its benefits, and we are now up to refine our position. So this is a process which is going on right now. But in the light of our general position on the rule of law, I think that we will remain open to this instrument. But the question is, how is it applied, and how is it really measured whether this instrument is applied to a certain member state or not? So it is a question of having a sound procedure also. Yes, and then there is maybe one more strand that during our presidency it was not that visible, that the ministers of justice also concluded a new mechanism to enhance the mutual trust in court decisions of each of the member states. And this is fundamental for the functioning of the European Union, is that that the member states among each others have trust in the court decisions. But as this trust is undermined in some cases, we need to have instruments to have a better communication on the validity and on the seriousness of court decisions. And there are council conclusions on this. It has not been very visible in the public, but I think it might be also of very added value when it comes to ensure a rule of law in member states.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was another question.
Next question.
So migration, yes. The discussion of the last months showed that we need to make this concept of resettlement within the European Union less important, less relevant. When we focus on the idea of who takes how many illegal or other migrants, then we do not help the problem. So our conviction is that we need to make this less relevant by having better preventive measures. And I think that this is the general mindset also within the European Union. And it is not only the Austrian mindset. And my government was very clear that solidarity is necessary and important, but it can also be provided by other means than just taking migrants.
Yeah, and Kestus Masiulis. Okay, sure. Mikrofoną.
Aš noriu paklausti jūsų, gerbiama ambasadorė, dviejų klausimų. Tai vienas klausimas, ar galima tikėtis buvo kokio nors progreso ir ar buvo progresas žmogaus teisų, demokratijos ir žiniasklaidos srityje pas jūsų kaimynus vengrus? Ar jūs kažką sprendėte tą problemą ir ką sprendėte? Ir kitas klausimas, akivaizdžiai Europoje plinta ir populiarėja populizmas. Ar buvo daroma kas nors, ar galima ką nors daryti, ar yra koks progresas ir šitoj srity? Tos dvi temos susijusios, bet atrodo, kad čia tik, aš matau tik tais negatyvės pasiekmes.
Thank you. Human rights in Hungary, in the greater context of the rule of law, has been tackled, I think, in November or in December in the general. I think it was November in the General Affairs Council. You know that the European Parliament has triggered Article 7.1 and has provided the Council with many arguments. The European Commission has also provided information on its assessment of the situation in Hungary. There are a few court proceedings, I think, running in the European Court of Justice. The Council had one debate on this. Without any conclusion. The conclusion was to come back to this issue under Romanian presidency. And for the time being, I did not see when this discussion is going to continue. So this is what happens on the European level at the moment, in a structured way, I must say. And other developments, apart from what is happening on the European level, is an issue of bilateral relations, and whether this is addressed in the framework of bilateral relations. On the populism, fight against populism, there is one initiative which we deem quite important, that is on the free and fair elections of the European Parliament. It is a package that the Commission proposed in fall. Also one of the files that come like a black swan to each presidency, were not predicted and not expected, and no resources were provided for this. And this was a huge package where the Commission gave in our lab. And the free and fair election package, it also contains proposals to more awareness on disinformation. And maybe this is one element where populism touches with, or has a kind of same effect as disinformation. So I would say this is one of the instruments that member states should look very close to. It is also to be continued now under Romanian presidency. There is a set of initiatives that the Commission has launched, and we think that member states should take these proposals very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Padėkoju ambasadoriai. And coming back to our bilateral, I believe that your government will decide to open here embassy, because we have a lot of relations, and not only in the trade economy, but also cultural. Last year in Salzburg, our singer Asmi Grigorian had huge success and very nice performance. And many, as I know, our singers, not only musicians, also working and teaching and having education in your country. But I believe that the full embassy here in Lithuania will be good news for us. Please follow Romanian example. So next is Romanian Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador, for coming. And please, you want to show some slides? Okay, please.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To comment on your last statement, indeed it will be very nice for the Austrians to reopen the embassy, but for us will be a little problem, because currently we are staying in their embassy, in their building. So we'll have to move. But anyway, I would like to congratulate my colleague for the significant results of the Austrian presidency. And indeed, if I will be invited again in July to speak about our results, it will be very good to have so many things to present here as my colleague. So thank you very much for this opportunity to present, to speak about the priorities of our first presidency of the European Council in front of this honorable committee. While setting these priorities, we try to have complementarity with the European strategic documents, such as the Bratislava and Rome Declaration, or the Leaders' Agenda, or the working program of the European Commission. And at the same time, we also try to ensure coherence with the TRIO program, elaborated together with Finland and Croatia. During our mandate, we will act as an honest broker, and try to advance as much as possible the current agenda and also to strengthen European integration. Our genuine intention is to have constructive and to work in a constructive and inclusive manner to advance as many files as possible, while at the same time preserving the unity and strengthening the coherence and cohesion within the European Union. And for that, we really count on the support of the member states and the European institution, and of course, we count on the support of Lithuania and our predecessors, Austria. Next slide. So our presidency takes place in a quite challenging European and international context, with some large-scale developments which can shape the future of the European Union. As it was mentioned here, we have this Brexit process, which at first we have proposed to manage in as much as orderly manner as possible, and while keeping the unity of the EU 27. And actually we will strive to make all efforts possible together with our EU partners and EU institutions to shape a strategic frame for the future. And a good moment for that will be the summit, the Leaders' Summit in Sibiu on the future of the EU, which we will host on the 9th of May. So that will be an occasion to speak about the future, how we see the future of the EU, but also to send a signal of unity and also to raise awareness of the citizens as far as the EU added value is concerned. Another important event, of course, will be the European Parliament elections, also in May, quite soon after the summit in Sibiu, because this will mean the end of the current legislative cycle and also the end of the mandate of the current Parliament and Commission, European Commission. So for us, in practice, it will mean that we'll have half of our mandate time to focus on finalizing as many legislative files as possible, and in the second half of our mandate, we will focus on the non-legislative issues. The fourth big priority, as it can be seen here, is the future multinational financial framework. Indeed, we will take over from our Austrian predecessors, so we'll continue to work on the negotiating box, and we will try to respect the decision of the European Council or the recommendation for us to lay the grounds for a solution in the autumn of this year. What is important for us is that the results will be balanced and also that they will reflect the realities which are important for the citizens. Next slide, please. We have all these challenges, and we believe that the key to address them is cohesion. Cohesion in all its dimensions. We see cohesion as a common European value, but also as an expression of unity among European member states and European regions. And that is why we have adopted as motto and central theme of our presidency, cohesion, a common European value. So this cohesion will be the base of our mandate, and we'll try to strengthen it in its three dimensions. That is the political dimension, which means that we'll try to strengthen the links and the cooperation between member states, European institutions, and citizens. Then also we'll try to strengthen the economic dimension of cohesion, which means that it should act as a catalyst factor for closing or reducing the development gaps of the member states, and also to strengthen the single market. And also we have the social dimension of cohesion that we'll try to promote, and this means that we will promote social convergence and social inclusion, and also we will try to preserve the 4 freedoms of the single market. Next slide, please. So, we have as a base for our priorities 4 main pillars of action. And these are Europe of convergence, a safer Europe, Europe as a global actor, and Europe as common values. Next slide. If we talk about Europe of convergence, so the Romanian presidency general objectives are to promote economic and social upwards convergence and to further improve the functioning of the single market. We have a number of key actions here. So the first is reducing the development gaps, and here an important role will have the new multinational financial framework, which is of utmost importance in providing the necessary financial and regulatory means for ensuring convergence. Then we have competitiveness, which means, which translates in the consolidation of the European single market and its 4 fundamental freedoms. Also, objectives here are to eliminate, continue to eliminate barriers to cross-border movements of goods, labor, services, and capital, and to maintain a strong industrial base as a prerequisite for the competitiveness of the European economy. Then we have employment and labor mobility. We'll try to promote labor mobility as a reflection of the fundamental principle of freedom of movement. Then we'll try to advance negotiations on the European Labour Authority. Innovation, digitalization, and connectivity. In order for the EU to be at the forefront in these important domains, enough sufficient investments need to be made in several areas, such as research and innovation. And then we have climate change and sustainability. And here we believe progress is needed on the EU climate agenda and towards the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Next pillar is a safer Europe. And here the Romanian presidency will contribute to further defining and implementing the Union's answers to a wide range of security-related challenges. And our key actions are as follows: better managing migration and the external borders. This topic, migration, remains in focus in order to continue the substantial efforts made in turning the concept of a comprehensive approach on migration into action. We'll try to ensure an efficient and sustainable management of this phenomenon. Then we have combating radicalization, terrorism, and enhancing cybersecurity, because the EU action in these areas will contribute to the consolidation of the internal security of the Union. And the real challenge here is to build the necessary capacity to prevent and address threats. Improving the functioning of the Schengen area, our presidency will continue to work on the key legislative files in the field, such as setting up the interoperability of the EU security systems, proposals aiming at strengthening the operational capacity of the European Border and Coast Guard Agency Frontex, or strengthening the security of identity cards of EU. Next slide. It's Pillar 3, EU as a stronger global actor. Of course, here the Romanian presidency will support the High Representative in delivering the ongoing CSDP initiatives and in further consolidating the global role of the EU. As far as CSDP is concerned, our main focus will be on developing EU defense capabilities while ensuring complementarity and the reinforced partnership with NATO. We will try to strengthen the resilience of the Union, to counter hybrid threats, and to improve strategic communication tools. Also, as key actions, we have advancing EU's enlargement policy. And here we propose to achieve a steady progress in the EU's enlargement policy within the agreed parameters, while supporting reforms, democratization, and reconciliation efforts in the Western Balkans. Turkey is also a candidate state and a key partner for EU in areas such as managing migration, countering terrorism, but also in ensuring regional and Euro-Atlantic security. So we will carry on the necessary efforts in order to stimulate a pragmatic and constructive dynamic in the EU-Turkey relations. Then we have to ensure a proper consistency of European action in the Eastern neighborhood. And of course, this will be of particular importance for us since this year EU celebrates 10 years since the launch of the Eastern Partnership and 5 years since the conclusion of the first association agreements. We will support the efforts undertaken here in this field by the External Action Service and by the Commission for continued implementation of the deliverables under the EAP agenda for 2020, but also we will devote a special attention to consolidating concrete answers that EU could offer to the aspirations of states such as the Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia for an explicit European perspective. We will also aim at boosting the importance of the Black Sea region on the EU's agenda. Finally, strengthening the multilateral system and the international law. And here we aim to strengthen the transatlantic relationship, the EU-UN cooperation, and to continue the efforts to modernize the World Trade Organization. Next slide. The last pillar is Europe of common values. And here our presidency aims at stimulating solidarity and cohesion of the EU through promoting policies on combating discrimination, equal chances and equal treatment between men and women, as well as through increasing the involvement of the citizens, in particular the youth, in the European debates. We'll have initiatives on the topic of democratic change, which is a key priority for our presidency. Here we'll have as objective to conclude the legislative initiative on addressing the infringement on personal data in the context of the European election in May, and also to advance the discussion on how to better communicate Europe and to address the very important issue of disinformation. Then we'll have gender equality. We'll try to bring more women in the labor market and to improve work-life balance for both men and women. And another topic is social development, and here we'll continue the efforts to expand education and learning mobility opportunities for all our youth and to ensure access to social protection for all categories of workers. So next slide. I will finish with our calendar. We'll organize a huge number of meetings, both in Brussels, Luxembourg, Strasbourg, and Bucharest. For example, in Brussels, we'll have 1,700 meetings, out of which 40 There will be meetings of the EU Council at ministerial level. But also in Romania, besides the summit in Sibiu, which I already mentioned, we will host almost 300 meetings, out of which 22 informal ministerial meetings. Also, our embassies in EU countries and in third countries will organize events. And here we plan to organize a conference on the Eastern Partnership topic together with the Foreign Ministry. So here I conclude. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. And this weekend I'm planning to go to the Bucharest and first European Affairs Committee Chairman's meeting. Rasabut Bergite, please.
Dear Ambassador, thank you very much for your presentation, and I would like really to ask you about the Romanian position on negotiation on MFI. You know that Lithuania has positioned that quality is really more important than rapidity, as you mentioned in your presentation, that it's absolutely obvious that both issues are equally important.
Yeah.
Yes, so my question is really how Romania will take this opinion of such countries as Lithuania, and the quality you have really to take into account. Thank you.
And also let me add, are you planning to finish completely this budget? And one more question, Victoria Chimilite-Nielsen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We'll actually have two questions. One is about accession towards Western Balkans. Right now, the timeline is that in 2025, Serbia and Montenegro is expected to join. So what is your take on that? How are you going to proceed in this in the time of your presidency? And another thing is, well, you mentioned, I really especially like the slide on gender equality, human rights, and the question of Istanbul Convention, of ratifying Istanbul Convention. Are you planning to proceed on that during your presidency? Thank you.
Please, Ambassador.
So thank you very much for your questions. I will start with the future budget, which is indeed the flagship file of our presidency. As I mentioned, we will take over from the Austrian presidency and continue work on the negotiating box. Because we have this instruction from the European Council to do all our efforts so that the budget will be adopted in this autumn. We will take it very seriously, and of course we will not finish during our presidency, but we'll try to lay the grounds for a timely adoption of the budget this autumn. And for that we take different measures, one of them being the inclusion of this topic of the budget in all the meetings of the General Affairs Council during our presidency. During the negotiations, of course, we take into consideration all positions, especially that generally in this file, the Lithuanian position is quite close to our position, and we'll try to strike a balance between financing the new priorities of EU with the financing of the policies that contribute to growth and reducing the development gaps between countries. More or less, I think that's how we stand here. Thank you. So your first question was on the Western Balkans, which I mentioned is a priority, and we have a number of countries here. As far as Serbia and Montenegro are concerned, they are in negotiation process, and we will try to advance as much as possible during our presidency with this negotiation. with a view to respect the set deadline. Then we have also the former Republic, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. We'll see how it finishes with the name. But and Albania, which have a recommendation also to start negotiations in June this year, if the situation is positive. So we wait for the Commission paper in spring, and then we'll see how we proceed. Hopefully, it will be a positive development. We have also Turkey, as I mentioned. It's a very important partner of the European Union because we cooperate with them on many important issues, such as managing migration, counterterrorism. They also contribute to the regional and Euro-Atlantic security. So what we want here is to have a very good dialogue with Turkey. There is also Bosnia-Herzegovina, which we support in their reforms. And, Kosovo. Here we take the approach of statute neutral because, as you know, we haven't yet recognized this country. We follow the discussions with Serbia, but we will continue in a very open and neutral manner the dialogue with them also. So thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. But as I understand, you think that with Macedonia name, North Macedonia, they are not finished yet?
They adopted in their parliament the changing of the name, and now we are waiting for Greece to take the same decision.
But the Prime Minister survived? No? Survived, as I understand. There was no confidence vote.
There was?
There was.
I haven't followed, yeah.
Yesterday, probably, but there's no any information. Okay. So, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, both ambassadors. Thank you for possibility to meet and to have informations. And let's thank you again to the Austria and the best wishes to Romania.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The first presidency, by the way. We also been 6 years ago very tough on that.
Yes.
So, but the recommendation: please not plan too much events.
Okay.
Too late.
Too late. Too late. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's pleasure to meet you. Ambassador. Thank you. We will see in Bucharest.
Yes.
May I just ask you one issue? Our Secretary General is coming in March
Yeah.
from the Ministry for Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
Whom do I contact? So debate this on
Of course. Of course. I will give my card. Just a minute.
So I see you tomorrow, yes?
Kalbėkit, prašom. Kas nors gerai?
Palydės,
Of course, laimėjau. Kalbėkit, prašom. Aš jau buvau jų, nes Rožą pačiu nusijungė.